Mix Attack on Titan with Jujutsu Kaisen, with Devil May Cry, with Asura's Wrath, with Star Wars, and 1,000 other IPs, and you get the Game of the Year. 16 was my first time delving into the Final Fantasy franchise, and as I always am with new experiences, I wasn't expecting anything mind-blowing considering how many people were raving over the game's demo. However, my lack of knowledge and in turn skepticism quickly subsided with the demo that blew the minds of just about the entire world, myself included. After the brief 2-hour stint in Valisthea, I immediately spent $75 on the game as if I had the type of money to warrant a Titanic exploration inside of a refrigerator. I don't have that kind of money yet, and when I do I'm going to try the exact same thing, but for now, I'm happy to say that I spent a good chunk of change on what was easily the best game of 2023, so far. And I really emphasize so far because it feels like almost every new game manages to somehow beat out the rest of the year's lineup, minding recency bias. Anyways, beyond its incredible story and cinematics that, for the most part, were full of action, fucking, and emotions all across the spectrum, one of Final Fantasy XVI's biggest standout qualities were its unparalleled boss fights. Since the game is nearly 40 hours long, there is a massive pool of bosses within, and as such, Alex and I decided it best to split our ranking into a two-part video, with today's covering the first 17 of 34 bosses that we counted. Before we begin, we'd like to thank our patrons, as always, for their support, and for all of you, Sonic 06 is finally in the works. Thanks. If you'd like to join, check out the link in the description and vote on what game you would like to see us cover this month. Stay tuned for part 2 of our boss ranking coming out soon, and enough with the beginning spiel, let's get into the video.
This is one of those rare cases where a game doesn't have any bad bosses, so it just comes down to things like spectacle and moveset variety. A trend you'll notice is that the lower ranked bosses are mostly the random buff animals you have to kill since they have no real story significance or crazy cinematic shenanigans going on. The Republican War Panther is the least interesting of these foes because he pretty much just does the same thing over and over. He either swipes at you, tries to repeal Obamacare, or swings his feet into you while breakdancing. None of these work and he dies. Outrageous madhouse of a boss fight, everyone.
Gigas in my mind definitely benefits from the novelty of being the first boss. During the intro I wore the time stop ring because I wasn't good at the game, obviously, and I was fine with that, and so I cruised through the rumbling giant no problem. I appreciate Gigas' design and setting, and at the time I even enjoyed the music, but to save us the grief later, that was because, once again, he was the first boss. I'm not sure how Alex will edit this video in terms of background score, but almost every single fight in this game shares the exact same theme minus maybe like 4, and the others, besides an even more select few, all share a theme that sounds like a shitty pre-Discovery Daft Punk tune. Gigas benefits a lot from being ground zero in almost every department, and if it says anything about him, he becomes a dime a dozen mini-boss almost immediately after this segment.
Final Fantasy XVI's director went on record a few months ago before the game came out to say that one reason the game features little diversity is that if it did, it would end up recontextualizing the entire game as a low IQ segregation allegory straight out of the brilliant mind of David Cage. Unless you're the kind of person who thought Animal Farm was a book about talking pigs, the parallel would be hard to ignore. I may have paraphrased a little, but that was the gist of it. If they were to go that route, however, Tiamat here would basically be Stefan from Django Unchained. He's more or less a regular guy, so pitting Clive against him is like tossing a toddler in a pen with a starved pit bull.
Boss 2 is a decent 7 out of 10 I'd rate it, and unlike Tiamat, this is about as far from slavery as this game gets. Marlboro used to be called Marlboros, and ironically I smoked a Marlboro for the first time last week, and smoked a Marlboro for the first time this week. One was a lot less tough on the lungs though. Marlboro breath is quite a system shock. I'll incorrectly go on record saying that a boss can never really be bad if its entire moveset is farts and burps, and that's basically a Marble. I'm a vegetarian, I don't want to kill a tangle kelp.
This is my personal least favorite boss solely because of that one move where he rolls around on the wall. It's just boring, like what do I do here? I can't even hit him with magic, so doing anything is totally pointless. The most entertaining parts of the fight are whenever Sid talks because he is awesome and cool, unlike this bum-ass fraud. There's a reskin of him called the Flame Lizard with like one different attack, which implies Fafnir is just LARPing as a dragon anyways. Fafnir's lucky kiwi farms hasn't been invented in Valisthea yet.
I feel like I'm a total sucker for visual design, and Charada's is weak. To me, it looks like a stock evil angel creature. All of them just look like a part of a very shallow spectrum. Sure, the fight's alright, I guess, but I thought it was exceptionally easy and ended a very built-up moment with a poof of ash instead of the nuclear fucking bomb that came much later I was expecting to happen here. Like a lot of non-cinematic bosses, just one stagger can decimate almost its entire health bar, and it is never more apparent than Charada. Simply, it's just too easy to feel rewarding for me.
This fight just makes you feel like an asshole because it's sort of obvious this is Jill from the prologue and she's talking about defending helpless children the whole time. The gameplay is rather average since, like with Tiamat, it's one of the first couple bouts you find yourself in. Her magic variety makes it a smidge more engaging, but otherwise it's more a story boss than anything else. I must say, I really don't think Jill should feel guilty for helping the Iron Kingdom though. Like what the fuck is she supposed to do in that situation? Just look at all those little kids and be like, sorry guys, but utilitarian ethics dictate that I should let you die for the greater good. Bye bye! Bye! I guess it was fortunate for the Iron Kingdom that the dominant of Shiva wasn't Sheldon Cooper or one of his ilk.
If you've watched Alex and I's commentary before, thank you, or if you haven't, why? You either already knew or will quickly learn that we struggle immensely with differentiating quality from spectacle with regards to boss fights. Maybe there is a parallel correlation between a boss having cinematic flair and it also being the best fight in the game, perhaps a result of more focus on the sequence relative to smaller scale fights, but seeing as the vast majority of the bosses in Final Fantasy XVI are anime level spectacular and get increasingly so over the course of the game, Typhon was a strong letdown. First off, the setting is completely static and takes place in apparently every action game ever's training area. Blank white and infinite complex with a gray circular patterned floor. Haven't seen that before since I booted up Fallen Order about 10 minutes ago. Playing as Ifrit is pretty awesome, but the first phase was almost mind-numbingly easy. It was like a boxing match against late-career Muhammad Ali. Immediately after, Typhon transforms into a transgressor, definition, a person who facilitates an act that goes against a law, rule, or code of conduct. An offense, also pronounced transgressor, which I guess in this case is growing 9 times your size while becoming Satoru Gojo in the process, altogether putting the Grinch's puny little rich piana heart growth problem to shame. This phase is a lot more engaging relatively speaking, but Typhon stays completely still for a lot of it, with the main mechanic in motion being Ifrit's sprint evasion that the entire boss moveset emphasizes. It's fun, but after a while it gets repetitive, leaving Typhon as not just the worst icon fight, but a remarkably unremarkable one as well.
Pronouncing this name is fucking impossible. It either comes out like I got my tongue pierced 5 minutes ago or sounding like Co-Earl, which just has to be wrong. It's another one of those fights like the War Panther where some guy makes you fight a random animal and then it dies and you win. However, this guy has a few more moves than the War Panther, all of which are enhanced by the vastly more novel biology of the Co-Earl, like their built-in whips and electric affinity thanks to their metal whiskers. Perhaps my nuts weren't quaking with excitement, but I think I was at the very least amused, the same way one might be when passively eating potato chips or relaxing in a comfortable bed.
The Imperial Cannoneer is like a girl you wouldn't normally think is attractive, but you're at a beach house with friends and she's there too, so all of a sudden you have an urge to talk to her. He's pretty cool, albeit a mini-boss, but why is everyone in Clive's party so shocked that he's infected by a Kashik when he first shows up? Every other thing in the entire level is a Kashik, and the air itself is literally a Kashik juice. I feel like it should be expected. Clearly being a Kashik doesn't really matter much to Cannoneer aside from making Clive and the gang feel weirdly downtrodden about killing him. If they weren't a Kashik, they'd all still try to kill you, you know? With Shiva's dominant and now this, I feel like this game's approach to death by force is weirdly nonchalant. Anyways, the Imperial Cannoneer has a couple flashy moves of note, but ultimately is a glorified mini-boss.
This is like that one boss from Nier Automata you have to fight 9 gajillion variants of, except it dies in 10 seconds instead of 10 hours. They're even both on elevators now that I think about it. I guess Square Enix saw that fight when they were looking over Nier Automata and was like, holy shit, we need a robot orb in our game too, but then forgot a zero when inputting the hit point value. It's fun while it lasts, but it just couldn't take my barrage of spells without folding. To its credit, it does try to charge its cells to do something, although what that something might be is a mystery to all. Perhaps we shall never know.
First icon, not the worst icon to spoil the rhyme. It is probably the most repetitious though, and I personally had it a lot lower than Typhon. Playing as Phoenix just isn't that fun for me. I don't like having to track the icon with an analog stick in a sequence that feels like it should use motion controls, and the combat is extremely one-dimensional, with it being a genuine cycle throughout the main action bits. Cinematically it's pretty cool, and setting-wise, well, how the hell did construction workers manage to make this? Every game with infrastructure totally kicks real life's dick, especially in things like science and construction and architecture. It must have been aliens, man. I feel bad for all those Egyptians that probably did make the pyramid who now get snubbed out for big-headed, googly-eyed things that if they were real, would probably look at us like little microscopic worms. Oh, the icon of fire. I tend to get off track when I'm doing monotonous repetition for more than 5 to 10 minutes. No! Joshua's dead. Oh, wait, this is a JRPG. A main character's death to build up for revival and redemption later is a canon event. Sweet.
I was honestly a big fan of these two. I almost always dig fights where some degree of arena awareness is layered with the threat of the boss. While they aren't members of the notorious set of gank bosses that make a living out of slurping tears from the eyes of first-time players, Chirata and Suparna do leave a good impression with them at the very least. I wouldn't call it a balancing act because their AI aggression is so low that you can kind of ignore whatever one you're not attacking, but it's definitely a step up from the lone Chirata fight earlier in the story. If nothing else, it reminds you that Benedicta is a competent threat and can do more than hump everything with 2 legs and an icon. She should go grab brunch with Clive's mom down in hell sometime. I have a feeling they'd get along like 2 peas in a pod.
I'd pay a good wad of cash to be called an Undertaker. With a name that heavy, you need to be enjoyable, and luckily, the Undertaker absolutely kind of deserves its name. Odin isn't in this video, but a better example of this would be him being the Warden of Darkness. Shit. Big lasers from a central chest cavity, been there, done that, but it's never not cool. However, that's pretty much all the Undertaker does. He's easy as they come, but man is it fun illogically dashing into but still somehow avoiding a laser big enough to melt the United States with a quick twirl.
No, not the friendly one voiced by Vin Diesel, this is the other one. For a boss with little to no story import, this is a quite cool fight. For starters, he introduces the mechanic of staggering someone out of an ultimate attack. I don't know what Atomic Ray does, but that shit sounds raw as hell, and I was not trying to find out. His animations make it really intuitive to time your dodges, which is useful unless you're one of those people who played with auto dodge on for some reason. That's like going to a fireworks show blindfolded if you ask me, but whatever floats your boat, I guess. Just do not let me catch any of you motherfuckers disagreeing with me on this list, because you know as well as I do that your opinions do not count if you did that shit.
Speaking of magnificent names, going back to Undertaker, Midnight Raven is a chart topper. It's been a theme in this video, but this is an eventual mini-boss that makes its initial showing as a main boss, aided by a girthier health bar and cinematic spectacle. To me, it's like a toned down and less visually appealing knight, but still, he's pretty great to beat up. Clive's triple blade lock was genuinely a top 10 moment in the game for me. I did this at like 2:30 in the morning, and it was the equivalent to downing an entire jug of gorilla mode. It was so good it even landed itself at number 19 in our boss ranking. Yeah, dude.
Dragons have one glaring issue across almost every single game they are in, and that is the way lock-on works for them. Their head is a weak point most of the time, sure, but I can't see what the fuck is going on if locking on makes me stare 90 degrees upward if I'm within 30 feet of the boss. It's not the end of the world since the game is totally playable without lock-on, but it's just an observation I ought to make after playing a ton of games with this same quirk. Otherwise, the fight is solid and has at least one memorable attack in the form of that sweeping flame breath from above one. I got pissed off at the time because it ruined my perfect perfect run when I was going for that not damaging a boss trophy, but looking back it was fair enough. I had this fight a bit lower than Jack did solely for that reason, but I don't think ill of the fight really. Begrudging respect, if not pleasure, is my takeaway from this fight.
Thank you so much for watching, and be sure to look out for part 2 coming very, very, very soon. Remember to like and subscribe if you haven't, and otherwise be sure to check in every Wednesday for new uploads. That's all for now. Deuces.